This might be the best and easiest way to create a direct booking website. A couple months ago, Gil had me on his podcast, and afterwards he showed me his product, and his product is called CraftedStays. And CraftedStays is essentially a direct booking website platform that mimics Shopify. And if you know anything about Shopify, you know that they have the easiest way to get a website up and the fastest way to accept payments. And so he took that philosophy and brought it over to the short-term rental space. In this interview, we talk about issues that current website solutions have, why CraftedStays might be the best option for any kind of short-term rental operator, and different ways to get traffic to your website so you can get more bookings and make more money. I love this interview with Gil, and I love his product, CraftedStays, and I recommend it to anyone who is looking to get more direct bookings without relying on OTAs. I hope you enjoy this interview. A couple months ago, I had a survey, and everybody that would sign up for my newsletter would fill out this survey. And direct booking websites was a topic that people were pretty interested in. And then you and I had our podcast, you showed me your product. I think it's very interesting. So could you explain to everybody what CraftedStays is?
Yeah, I often refer to it as almost like the Shopify for our industry, but not a lot of folks may know what Shopify is. But I come from, prior to starting CraftedStays, I come from the e-commerce industry. And I just saw how many brands that were built and built off a relatively easy platform to use. So like if you wanted to start a e-commerce store, you can sign up for a subscription for Shopify. It's not that expensive. And you can start in the morning, and by the end of the day, you can have a really well-performing and good-looking site. It can do checkout and all that stuff. And when I went into direct bookings, it was extremely hard. I didn't want to use the PMS's cookie cutter website builders that's on platform. They didn't look all that great. It didn't allow me to create new pages. Didn't allow me to represent my brand. So I did what I knew best, was like really research and figure out like what is the best way to build direct booking sites. And everybody was using WordPress. So I was like, okay, if everybody's using WordPress, let me go ahead and try it out too. And it was so hard. It took me 4 weeks to build our direct booking site. And I shared it with my peers, and my peers really loved it. But like I was like, I'm not doing that ever again. And I realized my day job was working with Shopify, and I saw what they were doing, and I was like, wait a minute, there needs to be something like this for our industry. So I left my W-2 job, and I basically really tried to make it easy for anyone to build a really well-performing site. And so far, I think we're on the path to make it even better than what a lot of our like design agencies are using, because we're really focused on commerce.
I think you would agree with this. The back end of Shopify is superior to any other website platform because of how organized it is. It is commerce focused. Are you guys building something similar to the Shopify backend with CraftedStays?
Yes.
I don't know if a lot of, at least my readers on the Lodge Social, know what Shopify is. Is there a way you can explain it to somebody who isn't familiar with Shopify and who has never been on the backend before?
Yeah. So if you are trying to build an e-commerce store, you can sign up for a Shopify subscription. You can add your products to it. You can add your brand logos onto it, your colors, pick templates, and then integrate even your own Stripe account into it. And pretty much by the end of that afternoon, you can build a really good looking site. And that's actually where we got a lot of our inspiration from, where we're not actually creating our properties onto our platform. We're actually integrating back into the major PMSs that most people use. So what we do is we allow folks to integrate into their PMS, pull in all their property information, and allow them to check out the various different templates that we have. And we've already optimized a lot of these templates for conversion. We're constantly doing tests on it. So from a data perspective, it is very similar to Shopify, but we've really adapted it to specifically our industry. And it's built from the ground up. So we're not using Shopify, we're not using WordPress, we're not using anything off the shelf. We built it piece by piece, Lego bit by Lego bit. And really, we learn a whole lot through that journey. And we're probably we're actually on a third version of our template editor, even though we've only been around for a little over a year now. But we just keep on learning about how people want to build their sites. How do we make it easier? How do we make it more turnkey? How do we make it more performant? And just quickly, just really keep on creating value for our customers.
When you build your websites and kind of come up with different templates and designs, do you think think of it in a way where you want to maximize your reach on search, SEO? You kind of want to fit. Maybe it's like a standard property management website, or do you go for a template that more suits like a company who gets a lot of traffic from social media? The guests coming in already know what the property looks like. They're already bought in, and all they need to do is essentially book. I see websites like, I'm sure, Onera. You've seen Onera,
Yep.
Train
Yep.
Stays, Live Oak Lake. Like those websites are pretty. It's a photo, a book now button, and that's essentially what it is. How do you build your
Yeah.
templates? Is it for search first or social first?
It really depends. We actually have a variety of different templates. I think we're at 5 or 6 at this point, and each one has its own different flavor. So we have ones that are like strictly more vacation rental, smaller hosts that has less than say 12 properties. We have templates that are geared towards more people with 40 plus properties. We have templates that are really image heavy, kind of like the Livo Lake, kind of like the Onera, which is more really image heavy, video heavy, and lets that draw people in. But we try to really focus in on like who the guest avatar is, what the portfolio type is, and try to mold it to that. So there's not like, it's not like we're using the same template kind of behind the scenes. Each one is designed specifically for that portfolio type.
Okay. And then do you have any data on how your sites perform on SEO? I know last time we talked, you mentioned that you do a lot of split testing with SEO. Like you redesign essentially an entire template just because you've ran some SEO tests. Like, what kind of functionality do you have currently with your templates, and what do you hope to have in the future?
Yeah, I think more broadly on from a conversion standpoint, we have a customer that signed on with us about a couple months back, and they were originally using the PMS's website builder. I think they were on Hospitable, and they moved over to us 6 weeks after they moved over to us. He reached back out to me and said that he saw a 75% lift in conversion. I was like, whoa, that's amazing. Like 6 weeks, that's not enough time to drive enough SEO there to drive organic traffic. But to increase the conversion that much was huge. And they attribute a lot to being able to represent their brand more, better navigation on both desktop and mobile. So little small things like that. On specifically like page ranks, I don't think I have like enough long-term data to know exactly until I tell you like, oh, this is what we're getting on average across our base.
Conversion rates. I want to dive into that a little bit. In your
Yeah.
opinion, as you design these templates, what components must you have in these templates that make a great direct booking site great? Like, what are these components that maximize conversion rates?
Yeah. So we have a framework actually for some of this. So we call it the PF framework, which is really performance. So we want to make sure that our sites are performing really well. They load really fast on mobile. They look great on desktop. Experience, which is really how you navigate that on the different screen sizes. So we want to make sure that when you're visiting on a mobile device, we may cut out certain sections, we may replace things, we may change the navigation, we'll change it from, we'll change how gestures work on it, for instance. And then desktop is different as well too. And then the last one is functionality, is making sure that each site performs really well, adheres to a lot of standards. So we actually have investments from Google. They invest in us from both a infrastructure standpoint, but also on a training standpoint as well too. So we're part of Google for Startups. So they've given us a lot of advice on how to really make our pages crawlable, so that when their search engine crawls our pages, that we're adhering to their standards. And we're constantly thinking about like, how do we make it better? So I think there's a project that we have to make sure that we're sending them all the necessary information for GVR, Google Vacation Rentals, for instance. So that's a project that we have probably in the docket for next year to even make crawlability even better.
Do PMS systems, like with their website, or do they integrate with Google Vacations, or are you going to be kind of the first to do it?
No, there's actually a lot. Most of them actually do integrate into Google Vacation Rentals. Most of them will have like a landing page. So like, for instance, OwnerRez, if someone clicks through on the Google Vacation Rentals, they're not brought to your property page. They're brought to the checkout page for it, which is kind of odd. Because at that point you didn't have the ability to look at their portfolio, understand the brand more, see if it fits you. You're brought to pretty much like to start booking. So you're pretty much asking someone to marry you before they even have said hello to you, which is really odd. But that's how some of the PMSs do it. Others will redirect them to the property page. I think Google also is trying to fine tune how they want to position GVR and make it a lot more mature compared to some of their other search products as well too. You probably know this, but we have like Search Console that gives you a lot of analytics. It gives you keywords that people are looking for, but for GVR, there's none of that exist. So I think like for me, when I look at GVR, it's still very much in its early days, and I do think that it has a lot of potential to drive a lot of traffic, specifically for direct bookings. But a lot of the tools on how to optimize for it is non-existent so far.
I would imagine when you're meeting with new clients or meeting with people interested in crafted stays, a big obstacle you might get, and I could be completely full of crap right now, but I was kind of thinking through these questions, and I was like, I wonder if this is an objection he gets. And I say this because I know a lot of people that I talk to through the newsletter. They say, well, my first issue is I got to get traffic to my website. So when somebody comes to you and they say, I love your product, I want to move over because maybe my PMS website is or my WordPress website, like it takes me half a day to make any changes. I want to move over to your product, but I'm not really getting website traffic anyways. How do you get them to make the switch, or what do you say to that?
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand. Like you need to, one, have a well-performing website that converts, but you also need to have enough volume of traffic going into it to make it actually fruitful. So you kind of have to work on both of them almost at once. If you ignore one side, you're going to have a leaky bucket. So for instance, if you're driving traffic and you have a poor performing website, it doesn't matter. Like if you're driving volumes of traffic, you're going to convert very, very little. But on the other end, if you have a really well-performing website that converts really high, but you're not driving traffic to it, then you're not going to get anywhere either. So these are actually like two components that you do have to pay attention. And we realized this early on in building out CraftedStays, where we were building out these well-performing sites, we were launching them, and our customers didn't know how to market them. And that was actually why we ended up starting our podcast in the first place. And that's why I kind of had you on the show. And like, there's many different parts of driving traffic. There's branding, knowing your guest avatar, writing copy on there, running ads, SEO, working with influencers. There's a whole bunch of there's many different tactics that you can use, a lot of different strategies. And there's not like one size fit all. Everybody should be doing these sets of things. Like everybody's portfolios are just a little bit different. Their guest avatar is different. The people that they're trying to reach is different. So the tactics that they're trying to use may differ. My suggestion is to really acclimate and understand like all the different parts to it to figure out like what works well for your business. I've had folks that all they do is they're on Facebook groups and they're part of the fishing community and they're pretty embedded in there, and they just post whenever someone needs to stay, and they drive like 80% direct bookings. That's nuts. That's not necessarily a strategy that I can use in my vacation markets. So like everybody has their own tactics, and I think more broadly, if you're really serious about owning your own business and really breaking free from the OTAs, you have to educate yourself.
I think, well, I know I heard you in a podcast say that you personally, for your vacation rentals out in Tennessee, right? That's where they're at?
Yep.
You said that you use a lot of
two in Tennessee and one in Branson.
Yeah, okay. So you said that you use a lot of email and text marketing, and you mentioned it worked very well for you, and we work through Lodge Social, through the agency. We work with companies similar to yours. They got they're cabins up in a touristy area in northern Wisconsin, but they're not I wouldn't go as far as say they're unique in any way. Like they're not tree houses in the middle of the forest. They're not these cool barrel houses that I'm starting to see all over the place. They're not necessarily unique. And I've also seen that email works very well for them. Like we'll drive ads to their
Yep.
website, they get a bunch of leads, and we convert through email. But on the flip side of the same coin, unique stays do really well with, booking direct through social media, influencers, unique channels like that. Um, is there more that you've seen in that marketing space, like between these types of stays should stick with email and ads, these types of stays should try influencer marketing? Like, have you seen? Um, have you? Do you have more information about that?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to knowing who your guest avatar is. And we know this is all in marketing. Like, you really should know who you're trying to market towards, where they are, where they're spending their time. And that really helps dictate what marketing channel is going to be more effective for you. For me, mine are cabins, like, and they're not tree houses, but they have unique amenities in them. They have pools, they have mini golf. They're nice cabins, but they're not tree houses. And I think the portfolio types are typically annual travelers that will visit the same place year after year. And so we see a lot of successes through emails because we can nurture them for a long period of time and provide value. So when we're emailing them, we're not telling them, check out our cabin, check out our cabin. We're not talking about that. We're talking about all the great things to do in the Great Smoky Mountains, all the amenities, all the kids' activities, all of those things. So that when they're thinking about visiting that place, they're thinking about us as the person that is knowledgeable and they should be trusting to book with them. But if you think about it on the other side, we talked about Onera and Live Oak. Like, those are very shareable moments, and the avatar are much younger. They're often a lot more disposable income. They spend a lot more time on social media, and they also share content. So, like, it makes a lot more sense to leverage social media for that type of avatar versus emails there. And they could be, and they probably are doing emails as well too, but social media is much more effective for a very unique stay that you can tell a very lovely story on that's shareable. Our properties, they look great, but they're shareable in like the word of mouth sense. So like if someone has a really good stay with us, it's really leveraging the experience that people got with us, and less about like the unique amenities all around.
Yeah, and we've seen, just to go off one note you said, we've seen on our side, for any property, just, the cabin, and super nice cabin, it's got the nice amenities, but it's not a tree house. We've seen Facebook ads, social media ads does really well at increasing demand and interest, to then where a guest will go search for you on Google, and then now your direct search traffic is doing a lot better. So we've seen that there's a point to do social media ads for both stay types. But either way, you got to go back to the core message you just had. But you got to know your avatar. Are they older? Are they younger? Do they hang out in specific cities, or are they kind of coming from all over the place? But yeah, I just wanted to add that note because I found it super interesting, the fact that social media kind of drove Google traffic and then drove direct bookings from there. But
Yeah,
last
yeah.
question.
We haven't run those same types. Yeah, we
Go
haven't
ahead.
run
We're
those
a
types
little
of tests
delayed.
on our side, mainly because because that's kind of like your niche there, where you're constantly thinking about how to optimize the ad spend, where people are, how do you really like reduce your ROAS. On our side, we're thinking of like, okay, once we get the traffic down there, like how do we actually get them to convert? We do look at, we encourage most of our users to, or all of our users to embed Google Analytics to it so that they know where the traffic is coming from. Because I think a lot of fault is really thinking that, okay, I'll build my site, I'll drive traffic to it. But honestly, not all traffic is all the same. There are traffic that is much higher converting, and there's others that may just not work at all. So if you're working with different type of marketing campaigns, you're even working with different influencers, my advice is make sure that you're tagging them appropriately so that when you can look at Google Analytics, you know which influencer is driving traffic, which influencer is driving conversion. Do they fit your avatar well so that you can really use that as a way to run better and more effective campaigns.
For anyone who is looking to move, they're just like, they're sick of their PMS website, they're sick of their WordPress website. Is there anything else that you want them to know about CraftedStays? I personally think it's the best option out there, but is there anything that I should have asked you, I didn't ask you, that you want to say?
I think the only thing that we didn't talk about is just like the level of effort it takes to actually build one of these sites. We build a lot of our sites in minutes. So you can actually build a well-performing site within 15 minutes. Most of our users will get their site set up in probably like an hour or two, but it takes very little time for them to really ramp up and build a really well-performing site.
Yeah, and to add to that too, I just spent this last week, I spent hours on a WordPress website, one page, one landing page. I just had to switch a bunch of things around, and it took me, I think had to have been 3 hours just to change that. So I think the time element, the fact that your website is so quick, fits well for a beginner, somebody who's just starting marketing for their short-term rental, or somebody who has a huge portfolio, is way too busy managing their portfolio and trying to get home in the evenings to hang out with their family or friends, and just wants a quick website in general. So I think it's a good option for both types of entrepreneurs in the space.
Yeah, but I think more so, like if you think about like WordPress specifically, WordPress was not designed for commerce. Eventually, about a decade ago, WordPress ended up acquiring WooCommerce, which was a plugin that was built on top of it, and that was like the only like commerce functionality that WordPress ever really had there. But originally, it was made to show static content, specifically blogs, online newsletters. That's actually like what it was actually made for. And I think a lot of folks have now used it to build other websites because it's just so flexible, but it was never meant to be a commerce website, which I love, because like, as I'm thinking about how to build our platform, I have no boundaries on what we can do. So we're thinking about, like in Q1 of next year, is to actually integrate in retargeting. So if someone visits your sites, they put in specific dates, they didn't complete checkout, to remarket them. And that's really hard to execute on with a static site builder like WordPress. But it's very easy for us because we're using modern technology.
Right.
So
yeah.
I'm excited about like the future.
Well, and you took the Shopify, I think, was the first one to kind of reinvent the website backend. Like, you go from a WordPress backend, even a Squarespace backend, to a Shopify backend, it's night and day. And to integrate stuff like the Facebook pixel, Google Analytics, retargeting is way easier to do on Shopify than it is with WordPress. And the fact that you guys took, in my opinion, the best website company, Shopify, and made a direct booking website out of it, is awesome. Like, that's really just all I have to say about it. It is. Yeah. You're building it right at first, making it simple and following Shopify's kind of blueprint, or their mission.
Yeah, and I think a lot of other platforms have done really well in this space too. And I come from e-commerce, and there's a lot of other platforms out there too, but they all kind of follow the same thing, where they're building the platform from the ground up specifically for commerce. You have big companies like Oracle and IBM that build a lot of backend infrastructure for some of the biggest brands out there, but no known reputable brand is building WordPress sites to drive e-commerce. And I don't think that hospitality should be doing the same either. Like, if you look at the big hospitality brands, they're not building WordPress sites.
Gil, for anybody who wants to get started, find you, learn more about you, where should they go?
Yeah, CraftedStays.co. You can check us out. You can look at our templates. You can book a tour with us, and I'll walk you through the platform and show you how it works. And if it works out, we can even build you a site in as little as 15 minutes. So yeah, we're pretty accessible. We do also have a podcast. You can see it on our website. And then we repost a lot of like the really big snippets back onto our social media as well too. So if you follow us on Instagram, you'll get like the best nuggets out of all of our long form podcast recordings.